My name is Peter Jaap Blaakmeer. I'm CTO of elgentos. We're in Groningen in the Netherlands. We're with 20 developers building Magento 2 shops on Hyvä nowadays. So I'm going to talk about Cypress. What is Cypress? Well, it's a testing framework, and you could compare it to MFTF, a little bit to Selenium, Behat, although well similar or functionality-wise close to each other, but it's not exactly the same. Cypress is a JavaScript-based testing framework. And the main advantage of it being JavaScript-based is that it lives right in your browser. So it knows about the DOM. It can read the DOM. It can read access your elements. It can hook into your code. It can hook into just about everything that's on your screen or inside your DOM. It has great retriability, and the best thing, it has a lot of tools built in so that it does automatic waiting on XML HTTP requests, AJAX fetch stuff. It waits for animations. So everything that can take up time, Cypress waits for it until it can interact with the site again. So you don't have to build in arbitrary waits of, I don't know, 5 seconds. So something would take like 2 seconds. You want to be sure it's already being done by the time you do your next action. So you wait for 5 seconds just to be sure. And if you do that everywhere, your whole test suite ends up being really slow, because everywhere you could have waited 1 or 2 seconds, you're waiting 5 seconds. So, it all adds up. Cypress doesn't need that. It sees when it can continue on its own, which means the whole testing suite is very fast, because there's a lot less waiting going on. So why did we decide to go with Cypress to work to do our tests with? Well, I don't know any one of you ever worked with the MFTF, the Magento functional testing framework. Any hands? Nobody? Well, happy for you, because it's terrible. Nobody wants to work with that. It's a lot of XML, it's a lot of configuration, it's a lot of hard work. It's data providers all over the place. It's a mess. It's very complex. It can do a lot of things, but Cypress can do a lot of things as well. So what kind of testing can Cypress do? We focus primarily on the first two, which is the end-to-end testing of the front end and possibly the back end. And we do integration testing. So how does my code function with third-party code? But you can also do unit testing. Cypress is built on top of Mocha. Mocha is a JavaScript unit testing framework. So it has all the Mocha assertions in there. So you can do unit testing with Cypress, and you can do load testing. There's this South African guy, Winston Nolan. He has a service called smash'em.io, and he does load testing using Cypress for Magento shops, and it's pretty scalable and can do really cool stuff. I've only seen what he has built, so I haven't touched it myself. So we'll focus on the first two, and specifically the end-to-end testing of the front end. So Cypress really easy. We have a lot of junior developers that we put on writing integration tests. With MFTF, we mainly put our seniors on writing the tests, because it was so hard to grasp all the concepts and everything. With Cypress is much easier, so it's very easy for us to put a junior who doesn't know Magento that well, but does know his or her way around the front end with HTML and JavaScript, to put them on writing some Cypress tests, just to gain some knowledge of the Magento platform, but also to write some great tests for our clients. So it's extremely easy to install. It's just npm init, npm install Cypress, and then npx, which is the npm runner, just npx Cypress open. And then you can go and edit your integration file, your spec file, and then you can run it, npx Cypress run. That's all there's to it. There are two. You'll see there are two commands here: the npx cypress open and the npx cypress run. And the open, those are mutually exclusive. Cypress open opens up the GUI, so the GUI. You can see what's going on there, and you can click on your tests. And npx cypress run is more for command line or your CI/CD pipeline to run it in the pipeline and see the results in a text output or place the results somewhere else. At the bottom, you'll see a very simple test. It tests whether it shows the homepage correctly, and then it visits the Hyvä demo site. And in this case, it will just check whether it responds with a 200 status code, and that's it. So then you'll have a bunch of commands that are used. Sorry, I have a little kid here. Kan je even naar mama gaan? Nee, oké. Even, sorry. Nee. Sorry about that. Working at night, that happens. So these are the commands that are most often used in Cypress in the tests. So we'll have visit for visiting a URL, get for getting an element, contains for testing whether a certain element contains a certain test, should, which is basically an assertion, it should do this or should see that. We can do a request, which is basically an fetch call or XSR request. We can click on something, we can type something in an input field. We can grab the URL of the current page it's on, and then allows us to chain multiple function calls in a subsequent chained call. So if we're talking about chaining here, we'll have parent and child commands in Cypress. And parent commands are prefixed by cy, which is basically the first command you'll do to set up a sequence of chain commands, usually visit, get, contains, or request. And then we'll have child commands that we can run on the output of the parent commands to fetch the URL, to do an assertion, click, type, or use a den to do multiple function calls. So in this case, child commands are chained off the parent commands like this. We'll visit the demo site, we'll grab the URL, and it should equal the URL we entered. If we were to do that and we were to do npx cypress run, so we'll see the output in the CLI. It runs my test spec file. It will test whether it shows the homepage correctly. There are 0 tests passing and 1 fails, and that's because the expected return value does not have a slash, a trailing slash, and the actual return value does. So we change the test at the bottom to include the trailing slash right here at the end. I now see I forgot to add a comma right there, a quote, single quote at the end. But if we were to run this with the single quote, then that would run. Then we'll end up with configuration. You have cypress.json. In this presentation, I'm still talking about Cypress 9 because we haven't upgraded yet. Cypress 10 has been released recently. They use cypress.config.js instead of a JSON file, now a flat JavaScript file. It's basically all the same, just the syntax is a little bit different. So if you'll start working with Cypress in the future, it's not cypress.json, but it's cypress.config.js. In this case, we'll still refer to the JSON during this presentation. And here we'll set the base URL, which is the Hyvä demo site, which is not hyvä.demo.io, but demo.hyvä.io. And now we can adjust the test by visiting just a slash, which will be appended to the base URL, and then it should equal the base URL we entered. We can use the Cypress object with the config method to obtain the base URL, and then we add the trailing slash. So in this case, in the actual test, I did have the URL right. In this case, it would pass, and then it will give us a summary of the results. And here you'll see a video true, and it ran for 2 seconds. And these are the specs that ran, and you'll see a little bit more nicer output in the table how many tests passed where and which failed and pending and skipped, etc. So let's try to get an element with the cy.get command. In this case, we'll just pass a CSS class name .relative.text2xl, which are Tailwind classes, and that will get all the DOM elements with those classes. Then we'll run first to retrieve the first element, and then we make an assertion. It should have the text Magento themes that are good, and we'll make that assertion. And then for the second, the bottom one, we'll do basically the same, but instead of should have text, it should equal. And now we'll see what happens. So the should equal, this says whether the content of the element exactly matches the string. But the problem is HTML is messy, especially when it's rendered out to the DOM. So it will contain white space and new breaks, new line breaks, stuff like that. So what we want to do is to add the trim option. So it will trim the text, and then it should equal Magento themes that are good. So that looks good, right? I missed. Usually I do a live demo here, and then it will fail because the trim function doesn't return the actual text. So it would not equal Magento themes that are good. In this case, we'll skip the live demo due to time constraints. But I'll explain it here. Cypress yields instead of returns. So Cypress is asynchronous, which is great and which makes it really fast. So a callback is needed to actually fetch the value from something that has been yielded instead of returned. So in this case, we'll use should, and we'll pass in the element, which is first argument is always the element the test is being run on. So in this case, the element that's been yielded by the cy.get function above. And in this case, we'll grab the text from that element, trim it, and then check it with an equal sign. And then we wrap it in an expect to run the test. So to make an assertion with the expect method instead of with the equal method in this case. So this might look familiar. That's because it's basically jQuery under the hood, and you can even access jQuery directly with Cypress $sign. In this case, the L element is just a jQuery object that's being returned by Cypress, or yielded by Cypress, I should say. You might have noticed a few slides back also, because I mentioned it. There's a video there. Cypress does automatic recording of the headless browser. It spins up in the background. So it automatically records it and it stores them in Cypress/videos. And you can check the file there. But we can also open up the GUI by running npx cypress open instead of npx cypress run. In that case, it will open the Cypress test runner. And this is this little tool you'll see here. You can see in the screenshot that we're, in this case, I was still using version 8.5. I've selected the Chromium browser. And I have one integration test file right now. It's got this test.spec.js with one test in it. And if I run it here, and you can't really see it that good because it's small letters. But the tests I just shown in the previous slides are mentioned here on the left. You'll see the top one that checks whether the demo.hyvä.io URL matches the demo.hyvä.io with the trailing slash. And then it will check whether it expected Magento themes that are good to equal Magento themes that are good. And that also passes. So these two are green. So in this Cypress test runner, you'll see here next to the address bar left of it, you'll see a little, what is it? You'll see it here. It's like an arrow or a pointer you shoot at. If you click that, and it will be like the inspect element tool. If you click on an element, then it will fill out the cy.get command for you with the CSS class that is unique for that element. So in this case, we use this in a new test, so we copy pasted it into a new test, and it will get the primary button element, and then it will click it, and then its URL should equal hyvä.io, because the primary button here is the visit hyvä.io blue button on the home screen. So if we click it, then the URL should match hyvä.io. So you'll see it's been added here at the bottom. It's also green, so that works. Yeah, you'll have time travel here. I won't do the live demo, but if you were to have this open and you would mouse over each line in the console here to the left, then you'll see that the screenshot on the right will also update according to the step where it was. So it will show you exactly what the headless browser saw at that point in time. So that's why it's called time travel. Right, Cypress Studio. It's still a bit experimental. Sometimes it's nice to use. You can enable it by setting experimental studio to true in the configuration. We'll configure a viewport width, which is a bit larger than the default. In this case, we'll write a product page spec where it says it navigates to a product. And then using Cypress Studio, we can, in the browser, you'll see in the GUI, we can navigate through the site, and then it will record our actions. And then you can, it automatically fills in the spec page with everything you clicked on. So in this case, you'll get really ugly. You'll see with the comments here that it's generated by Cypress Studio, you get really ugly CSS selectors because it will just fetch whatever is unique and not whatever is, human readable or even logical. So in this case, you'll get the really ugly selector on an X data in its slider component with a hash, which will probably change when the cache has been cleared. So it's nice to quickly set up a test, but then you'll have to still walk through all the CSS classes and the elements or the selectors to change them to be actually something you might want to work with. You'll also see here, it will get the text, and then it should have the text, and then you'll see a new line followed by a bunch of spaces, then some string, and then again a bunch of spaces. So that's why we did the trim functionality earlier. So this will generate ugly code, but it will give you a general idea of what to do with it. Yeah, so terrible test code. I mainly use it to quickly generate a test for something that I'm working on, fixing a bug for something, which we'll get to in a minute. Then we'll have the Cypress Dashboard. The Cypress Dashboard is a paid tool by Cypress itself. It's dashboard.cypress.io. If you sign up for it, it's not that expensive. You'll get a Cypress Dashboard key and a project ID, and all your videos of all your runs will be uploaded to the Cypress Dashboard. And you'll see here which failed and which succeeded. You can add your team members here. It will do some analytics on whether you have flaky tests, whether you have slow tests, tests that fail a lot. So it's a pretty useful tool to have. It will also do notifications towards Slack or whatever to let you know whether a test suite failed or succeeded or whatever you want to do with it. So yeah, these are the latest runs. You click one, then you'll see all the tests here. You can see how long it took, who started it, all interesting information. And then when you click on it, you'll get the test runner again, and then you can watch the video and see what happened. So we're an agency, so how do we use Cypress? We mainly use it in 3 ways. We'll have the generic testing suite, which you can find on our elgentos GitHub in one of our repositories. It's called elgentos/Magento 2 Cypress Testing Suite. Then we use it for specific regression tests, which is mainly when we're doing bug fixing. And we do scheduled tests on production. Also with nowadays with the generic testing suite, we separate between hot tests and cold tests. Hot tests are tests that hit the database of some kind, like creating a user or placing an order. And we have cold tests, and we only run our hot tests in a review environment, so acceptance and staging, and we only run our cold tests on production. So the generic testing suite, our main goal when we built this was to gain confidence that nothing broke for when we did an upgrade, for example, but also for all smaller feature branches. We always run our complete generic testing suite. In this case, we'll know immediately what broke. Not unfortunately not immediately why, but at least this offers some insight. Yeah, it's extremely useful after upgrades, and we copy it into a project and we adjust it where necessary. So we try to make that as easy as possible by making putting all the CSS selectors, all the texts, and all the URLs of the products you need in your test to put those in fixture files. So the idea is that when you put this into a Hyvä project, you'll only need to edit the fixture files. Well, we're not 100% there yet, but it's pretty easy. So we run this pre-deploy and post-deploy. So pre-deploy on the staging and the review environments, all tests, and post-deploy only do the cold tests in production. So we have tests in the following areas: homepage, product page, category page, cart, checkout, my account, contact form, newsletter subscription. I think there have been added some more in the meantime, but these are the main areas we're testing. By the way, we're not only doing Hyvä testing. The test suite now also contains support for Luma, and that's been mainly built by Vlad from Phoenix. I don't know whether he's in the room, but yeah, great. Thanks for your hard work, Vlad. It's really awesome. There's still a PR open. We're gonna get to that. But there's been a lot of work being done on all the Luma tests to make the whole test suite also work with Luma, which is awesome. So here's an example test. This is for the product search. We use page objects. So page objects are basically classes that hold specific implementation details for a certain part of the web shop, in this case search. So we'll let it search products with multiple hits. Our search key is hoodie because this example uses the sample data, which has a lot of hoodies. So it will navigate to the search. So in this case, we abstract away the logic where the search is and how to get there into the page object. So we'll navigate to the search, then we'll search with the search key, and then it should have the text search result for hoodie. And then we can create a screenshot, and then we'll capture the entire viewport. So the screenshot is in addition to the videos it makes. So this is the page object. In this case, it's fairly simple. Navigate, visit slash, because this is the mini search, so it's on the home page. So we'll visit the home page, and then we'll click on the search icon, and then search should be visible, and we'll type in hoodie followed by the enter key, and then should search. Specific regression tests. So this is where I use the Cypress Studio a bit more. Our main goal is that our customer never sees a bug they file an issue for twice. So it's a three-step approach. We write the Cypress test to reproduce the error. So client says, click here, click there, fill in this, and then they get here, and then it get a message. Okay, we'll write a Cypress test for it. Then we'll fix the bug. Then we'll run the test again, and then the test will obviously fail because we fixed the bug and the error message doesn't appear anymore. And then we invert the assertion. So we should see the error text, and then we invert the assertion and make it we should not see the error text. So in that case, we have a regression test, and then we'll commit it to the repository, and then it will be run on every time on the test suite. So if somebody else introduces new code that the bug will reappear, then this regression test will fail, and then we know it hit the same problem. So in this case, we catch the bug again before the customer sees it, and we made this a company-wide policy. So for every bug you encounter, you should be able to write a Cypress test if it concerns the front end. And it's a massive time saver because you start a bug and you think, oh, this is easy, I'll just do it manually, and then, oh wait, I missed something, I'll have to do it manually again. And before you know it, you've been going through the flow yourselves manually for about 10 times. So if you just wrote the Cypress test immediately, which only takes a few minutes, especially with the studio, you'll never have to do the whole thing manually again. Cypress is a lot faster than typing in fields, especially bigger forms, etc. So that's a massive time saver. I pretty much always use it, and sometimes it is a very simple bug which maybe does not need a regression test, and then I'll throw the regression test away, and then at least I had something to work with. So this is a reproduction test for something like that. In this case, we had a issue 240. It tests the checkout. It visits a product page. It clicks on the plus for the button to add one to the quantity field. Then it should say you added something, the name of the product. Then it will visit the checkout and fill out the field or the form. So I removed a lot of cy.gets to make the example fit in the page, but there's a lot more. And then it will accept the agreements, click on ideal with the monthly payment methods, select the bank, Rabobank, place the order, and then the URL should equal /checkout. And then the body should have the text error occurred, because that was the bug. Yeah. And then we invert the test. We fix the bug, and now we should not have the text error occurred. So in this case, we'll just commit the issue to the repository, and if the error ever occurs again, we'll get a failing test. Third one, schedule test on production. We want to gather some information on this. We use GitLab CI with the scheduled pipelines and Slack notifications. These are read-only tests, or the cold tests, and we add a user agent to identify our tests, so we can exclude them in Google Analytics, and we usually run them at night, just to make sure nothing broke somewhere in the previous day. Example tests. We have 3 categories, and we want to check whether these categories still contains at least 10 products. This particular client had an issue where sometimes products would disappear from a category, and we didn't know why. Something with the indexer, but what and why and when. So we made this test, and this test ran every 30 minutes, I think, and it would check whether we had at least 10 products in the category, and if it didn't, we knew exactly, well, within a time span of 30 minutes that it happened, and then we could ask the client, okay, what did you do in the last 30 minutes that might cause this? So in that way, we eventually found the bug, and we were able to fix it. So in this case, it's just to gather information, more information on a certain bug, more data points. Some Magento-specific tricks. Well, we tag them for local review and production, so the cold and the hot tests. We were experimenting with a Magento extension to make fixtures configurable. Wasn't very useful, so we abandoned that. And this is something we used in our generic testing suite to speed it up. The rule is test the UI once, so you make sure the UI works. And if you need to do the same action again, and there's a REST API endpoint available for that, use the REST API endpoint, because in that case, you don't have to run through the UI again, because you already tested it, but you do want the outcome. So, for example, we'll have a REST API support class, and in this case, it will create a customer account. So in our test, we test the registration form on customer account create. And once we've done that, and we need another account just to test something else, we'll create a customer account through the API, because otherwise we have to run through the UI again, and that takes time, and this is a quick call. So it will just grab the fixture file, create a customer with the data in the fixture file, and then it will say either it already exists, which is fine because we only need the customer to exist, or it's just been created, and then it will show us the email address that, or give us a response with the email in the response body that it has been created. So either way is fine. So the accompanying test will describe here the account activity. So describe is grouping of the several tests, so you know visually in the dashboard which tests belong to which group. In this case, it will always run before once, create a customer account with the fixture data. And then before each test, we'll log into that account, because the tests are all for the My Account section. In this case, then we test whether we can log out, then account.logout, again through a page object. And then the base CSS selector should contain the text you have signed out. And then a bunch more tests usually follow. Okay, I'm a little bit out of time, but I'll show you this one. I'm at the end now. We have visual testing. Percy.io is a great platform to work with Cypress to do visual testing. It's a SaaS offering. It's easy to install. It's also an npm package. It's Percy CLI. You'll need that to, I don't know why, but you'll need that. And Percy Cypress, obviously, for the connection between Percy and Cypress itself. And you'll use it by running ci.percy snapshot, and then you give it a screenshot name, and it will show you version A and version B, and then it will show you what visually changed. And you can configure your notification threshold. So let's say 10%, more than 10% of the page being changed is a problem, because less than 10% is usually, I don't know, let's say a copyright footer or something that changes a related product that's been fed through a product recommendation machine learning kind of thing. So that changes, which is a certain percentage. But if it crosses that threshold, like 30% of the page has changed, then you'll know something's going on, that you'll get a notification. We also use it for upgrades. So I did a Magento upgrade for a client of ours, and you'll see all the red. All the red means the second version, the second snapshot I sent to Percy differs from the first on these elements. So in this case, it turns out the theme removed the description at the top of this category. So you'll see the goedkoop kunstgras is in red, because that's missing in the actual lay under, actually the darker part of the screenshot. So the text is missing, the breadcrumb is missing, and the rest moved up. So that's why you see a red bar at the bottom, because the whole page got a little bit less high. This is another product page. You'll see that what happened here is that the thumbnails underneath the gallery, they had a different aspect ratio. First, they were resized and had a bar at the bottom and at the top, and now they were a bit zoomed in, so they failed the diff. So that changed between the two Magento versions we upgraded from and to. And here you see at the price, I think this went from 2 decimals to 4 decimals for some reason. And then here at the bottom, oh no, this went away. So this set 0, and then it said 0 in the previous version. In the new version, it was gone. And then here at the end, way down below, you'll see a bit of red. That was that went from 6 decimals to 4 decimals for the price per square meter. So these little teeny tiny changes we probably wouldn't even have noticed if we didn't use Percy, which sometimes doesn't matter. In this case, the client said, doesn't matter, but sometimes they do matter, and then you'll catch them with the visual regression testing. Well, I'm not going to talk about all the over 100 plugins that are available for Cypress, but there are plugins to do outgoing mail testing, drag and drop support, file upload. Oh, that's in Cypress now, the core now. So the Cypress file upload plugin isn't necessary anymore. And that was it. So thanks for watching. I'll quickly plug the generic testing suite solution. Share tab. This one. So it's at elgentos/Magento 2 Cypress Testing Suite. It's not plug and play. You'll have to do work to make it work for yourself. We don't do commerce, so it's only open source. It's not 100% coverage. Right now, it's not extensible. You have to copy the whole project into your own project. The checkout tests are for the Luma fallback checkout. And we have a proposed 78 tests, and we have about 60 something right now. So this is outdated information. So you can see here what it tests and what can still be built, which tests we still need. Here you'll see how to install it, how to set the versions. You'll need a token from Magento, to create the customer through the support plugin or the support file. Then use the tags. This is how to start it in CI, running against your local environment, and this is how you can contribute.
Wow.
So
thank you very much.
Yeah, I made it in time.
Thank you, Peter. So I first saw you in the Meet Magento Poland, I think, your talk when the Cypress Test Suite wasn't released yet. And I watched it in my living room on a big TV, and I was so impressed that I reached out to you in November or December, I don't remember exactly. And I said, oh, when do you come out with that stuff? Because we want to use it as well. And I already knew that the Cypress Test Suite was only for Hyvä, but most of our projects are still on Luma. And so we started a small collaboration to add the test for Luma as well. And Vlad, who is also here in the chat, then created all the tests for Luma. And I think we released that then somewhere in January. And this is really awesome. I think Cypress is one of the best tools you can use when you are into front-end testing. And Peter and his team really did a great job there. And I'm happy to join the effort at least a bit and contribute to your project.
Yeah, thanks so much for doing that. That's definitely great, and it helps with more people using Cypress and propelling us forward in the world of testing.
So Vina Kopp is already in the chat, but I think we have still some time left. If you have any questions to Peter, the creator of this test suite, please go ahead or write it in the chat, and then yeah.
No questions at all. Everybody's going to start using it tomorrow. Please nod your head. Yes.
Yesterday.
So whose hands are itching to start working with this? Okay. Yeah, almost everyone. Okay.
Really, I tried. Super simple. It's just a few commands, and then everything starts working. You have a nice GUI for your desktop, and you can play around that. If you also sign up there for the dashboard, it's really great because it can record all steps, including screenshots and videos, and they can be aggregated there, so you can build it into your build pipeline. There's also an alternative dashboard, a free one, which is called Sorry Cypress, because they are disrupting their business model, partly. And you can also run it in Docker. There's a great help chart. We will talk about Docker and Kubernetes later on, but we also host it for all our projects and aggregate tests there. And it's really a great tool, because if you integrate it into your build pipeline, then you can fully automate the whole testing process. And it really works out much better than anything else I've tested so far.
How much time was spent to build the framework?
I think we put in about 300 hours from our company, and then I don't know how many Vlad added from Phoenix, but for setting it up and thinking of all the tests and thinking of how to architecture it so people could work on it and figuring out whether to work with page objects or not, and so that about 300 hours on our end.
Yeah, on our side it wasn't that much. It was more the complex topic of how to arrange the fixtures, how do inheritance, how to architecture the text so that you can easily adopt it and adjust it, and that they are flexible. I think we also then integrated some mobile viewport testing stuff, so that you can also run it for smaller viewports. If you have a responsive design, this is already enough to do the mobile testing, actually. So we contributed also the mobile testing then, but I don't exactly remember. I would say around 100 hours, something like that. But it was not the difficulty writing the tests, actually. That is really done pretty fast. So you can write tests within minutes, and also from an experience level, you don't need much skills. You don't have to be a senior in order to write tests. It's pretty simple. Even juniors can write that pretty quickly with a couple of. They are already in the topic and can write cool stuff. So it was more the project and how to organize things, how to sync up with the Hyvä front-end test and the Luma front-end test, because obviously since they are depending on the DOM, they are completely incompatible. But of course we wanted to have kind of the same coverage. And one thing, if you don't recognize it, Cypress can also do REST API tests. So if you have anything which works with REST API, XHR requests, you can also use Hyvä to check them and check also the response, which is awesome. All right, some more questions? Okay, then Peter, thank you so much for joining us and giving us the talk. We have recorded it, so everything you showed will be available in a couple of days. Thank you very much again. Have a nice evening.
Yeah,
and
thanks. Thanks for having me, and you too. Have a good evening.
bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, guys.